Good evening and welcome to CYC News for the 25th of March 2018 and the 16th of Bottom Heart 17:34 am. I'm David Nada. In today's headlines, ISIS rebuilding as Turkish push into Afrin sends forces away from anti-terror fight, rocket attack on Damascus market kills dozens, French consul worker detained after smuggling weapons from Gaza, 3 weeks of terror in Austin ends with bombers' final explosion, Israeli military destroys Gaza tunnel and underground complex, South Sudan reaches milestone in eradicating Guinea worm, England World Cup fans will be safe, says Russian ambassador. But first to Syria, where the US warned on Monday that ISIS has begun rebuilding in some areas of Syria because of Turkish military offensive against the northern city has pulled the US Kurdish allies away from the fight against the terrorist group. Pentagon spokesman US Army Colonel Rob Manning, discussing the Turkish offensive against Afrin, said, "We are very concerned about the effect of fighting that has had on the defeat of ISIS efforts and would like to see an end to the hostilities before ISIS has the opportunity to regroup in eastern Syria." The State Department went a step further, saying ISIS has already begun to rebuild in places. State Department spokesman Heather Nauert said in a Monday statement, "The fighting in western Syria over the last 2 months, including in Afrin, has distracted from the Defeat ISIS campaign and provided opportunity for ISIS to begin reconstructing in some areas." US officials have been warning for weeks the Turkish military campaign against Kurdish forces in Afrin, launched on January 20, could undermine the fight against ISIS, as Kurdish fighters helping the US battle the terrorist group began leaving to help their compatriots there. But the Turks see the US Kurdish allies as terrorists, and said so as they reacted to Nauert's statement. A statement from the Turkish Foreign Ministry said, "The claim that the operation conducted against terrorists in Afrin would endanger the combat against Daesh is completely groundless. The approach that actually undermines the combat against terrorism in Syria is the use of one terrorist organization against another." US officials, however, have said efforts against ISIS have definitely slowed. At least 35 people were killed and scores wounded on Tuesday when a rocket struck a busy marketplace in a southeastern suburb of Syria's capital, Damascus. A police source said the rocket landed in Kashkul market outside the skirts of Jarmana. The suburb, home to a larger Christian and Druze population, is under government control and has repeatedly come under fire by rebel forces in nearby eastern Ghouta. The UN Refugee Agency said the government offensive on the rebel-held enclave of eastern Ghouta, one of the last remaining opposition strongholds in the country, has forced more than 45,000 people to flee their homes in recent days. More than 1,000 civilians are believed to have been killed since the regime ramped up its offensive last month. The death toll in Jarmana is the highest in a single attack by opposition fighters targeting the Syrian capital. Syrian TV has called it a terrorist attack. UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported the death toll was expected to rise, because many of those injured were in critical condition. Several other people were injured elsewhere in Damascus on Tuesday when rocket shells were fired on Al-Jala sport complex and Al-Amara neighborhood. Staying in the Middle East, and the Israel Security Agency announced on Monday, after a joint investigation with the Israeli police, a worker at the French consulate in Jerusalem has been arrested for smuggling weapons from Gaza into East Jerusalem and the West Bank, using his diplomatic immunity. According to the ISA, Romain Frank, a 24-year-old French citizen, smuggled 70 guns and 2 assault rifles through the Erez border crossing between Gaza and Israel using a consular vehicle, which goes through reduced security risks because of his diplomatic status. Franek allegedly smuggled weapons through the crossing on 5 separate occasions over the last 2 months. In an official statement about the investigation, the ISA said, "We're talking about the most severe incident in which repeated use has been made of diplomatic immunity and the rights that were given to foreign representatives in Israel in order to smuggle weapons that could be used in terrorist attacks against citizens and security force members." The ISA said that Franek obtained the weapons from a Palestinian in Gaza who worked at the French Cultural Center and then sold them to a person in the West Bank, who then transferred them to illegal weapons dealers. A total of 9 suspects were arrested, including a resident of East Jerusalem who worked as a security guard at the French consul. Israel's Minister of Foreign Affairs also participated in the investigation with full cooperation from French authorities. To the United States now, where for 19 days exploding packages terrorized residents in Austin as police frantically searched for the elusive bomber. The mysterious bombs killed 2 people and wounded several others, stunning the Texas capital, normally known for festivals and live music. The wave of attacks started with package bombs left outside homes on March 2nd and March 12th. It escalated last week when the bomber rigged a tripwire with an explosive and 2 days later sent a package bomb through FedEx. With every shift in tactics, fear spread as the attacks got increasingly unpredictable. After nearly 3 weeks of panic and mayhem, police concerned the man they described as their serial bomber on Tuesday night. When SWAT officers approached his SUV, he blew himself up in a ditch outside Austin. The Israeli military destroyed a Hamas tunnel in southern Gaza last Sunday morning and struck an underground military complex in central Gaza, Israel Defense Forces spokesman Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Consuris reported. According to Consuris, Hamas was trying to reconnect the old tunnel, destroyed in July 2014, to a new section of a tunnel in southern Gaza. Consuris added Israel has been monitoring the digging uses since detection technology for the last few weeks. Consuris said what Hamas was trying to do was build a kind of detour, a new tunnel that would link up with new part of that they would be able to use. The tunnel was destroyed from within Israeli territory, but not with explosives. Consuris said it was filled with a certain compound that would render the tunnel useless. The military would not provide further information on what was used to make the tunnel useless. This marks the fourth Gaza tunnel Israel has destroyed since last October. The third tunnel, destroyed in mid-January, was a mile-long tunnel dug under Israel that stretched from Gaza to Egypt. Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman commented on the tunnel saying, "I suggested Hamas invest their money in the welfare of residents of Gaza because they won't have any more tunnels by the end of the year." In a separate incident over the weekend, the Israeli Air Force struck the IDF termed an underground military complex in central Gaza. To health news now, and amid the war and devastation in South Sudan came glimmers of hope on Wednesday as the world's newest nation announced a milestone step toward eradicating a debilitating disease. South Sudan has gone 15 consecutive months without a single reported case of Guinea worm, a major victory for the country that once had the most cases of the painful parasite. Riek Gaiko, South Sudan's health minister, called it a massive achievement. Speaking at the Carter Center in Atlanta, Gaiko said, having known the suffering it inflicts on people, one is very happy today. Future generations will read it in the books as part of the history. We have restored dignity to our people. Former President Jimmy Carter organizing has led global efforts in eradicating Guinea worm. Guinea worm is set to become the only second human disease in history to be eradicated after smallpox was vanquished in 1980. But unlike smallpox, Guinea worm is a parasitic disease and cannot be treated with vaccines. It requires enormous lifestyle changes, education and diligence. Given those challenges and the unrest South Sudan has been since gained independence in 2011, the Guinea announcement is monumental. Civil war in South Sudan has led to a failed state on the brink of collapse, a humanitarian crisis and famine. Under those dire conditions, health workers forged ahead to stop Guinea worm, which is transmitted through unclean water. Those efforts, Gaiko said, have made the Carter Center a household name in South Sudan. The World Health Organization will monitor South Sudan for the next 3 years before it certifies the nation as free of Guinea worm. And in sport, England football fans planning on travelling to Russia for the 2018 World Cup will be safe, says Russian ambassador to Britain. Alexander Yevchenko, reassurances come amid an ongoing diplomatic row between the two nations following the nerve agent attack in the English city of Salisbury. At a press conference at the Russian embassy in London on Thursday, Yevchenko said, "All of the necessary measures are being taken. The British special authorities are in contact with Russian special authorities to provide the security of fans and all the British who will be in the territory of Russia." Tensions between the two countries intensified on Wednesday when the British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson compared Russia's promotion of the World Cup, which will be held from June 14 to July 15, to Adolf Hitler's use of the 1936 Berlin Olympics. During a meeting of Britain's Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Johnson agreed with a lawmaker's suggestion that Russian President Vladimir Putin intended to use the World Cup as a PR exercise, to gloss over a brutal, corrupt regime in the same way that Hitler used the Olympics as part of the propaganda for the Nazi regime. Johnson said, "I think the comparison with the 1936 is certainly right. I think it's an emetic prospect, frankly, to think of Putin glorifying in this sporting event." And that's all for CYC News. A reminder that you can watch this bulletin again throughout the week on YouTube. I'm David Nada, and from the CYC studios in Sydney, Australia, have a good night and God bless.